Hello, welcome back to Out of Spec, and welcome to a beautiful summer's day in Colorado. I have with me a lot of bugs, but also an Infiniti CUV. Brand new for the 2022 model year, this is the QX55, another QX addition to their lineup of crossovers. And this is an interesting place in the market. It's based around the same platform as the QX50. In fact, it's almost the same car, but this is smaller, even though the number's bigger. Interesting. This is very much a sport slope back version of the QX50. So less storage, but more good looks. And that's something interesting about Infiniti. I've fallen in and out of love with them over the years. I mean, when this design language first came out in 2012, 13, 14, I loved it. I loved everything they were doing. And then they went like 7 years without changing anything. So I appreciate them upping their game and giving us something that looks amazing like this. So yeah, I was curious to see what I would think about this because I kind of had a honeymoon phase with them and then I had a falling out. So will this rekindle my love for Infiniti? And to judge a book by its cover, I'd say yes, but there's got to be a lot more under the hood. This, as tested, is about $60,000 almost exactly, and that includes this $700 beautiful slate gray color. It's almost a blue gray. It kind of walks the line between those, and it's almost like Infiniti's take on a Nardo gray. And it also includes a $1,000 lighting option, which I guess gives you lighting under the sills and then lighting as you approach the vehicle. That's a bit of a price tag for that. But yeah, as tested, $60,000. It sure looks the part if you ask me. I love the styling. So let's take an in-depth look at this Infiniti. First, design-wise, this is distinctly Infiniti, but they are taking a slightly different approach. They've had kind of a curvy, elegant shape for the last 7 years or so, and this is taking a bit more of the angles and etching those in. You have these beautiful kind of fog light bezels, which are kind of an aggressive U shape towards the grille. And then speaking of the grille, it's a very interesting like interwoven origami style. It's actually a pretty good size grille and badge for the car. Sometimes I have beef with people who have huge grilles and huge badges with no reason. This one at least hides the radar sensor in the badge, so I appreciate that. And then you also have the distinct Infiniti LED running lights, daytime running lights, and a little bit of body cladding here all along the sides and the wheel arches, but not too much. And there's some interesting designs going on kind of subtly. You don't notice it when you first look at the car. You just see the car and you're like, wow, that's pretty. But why? Well, there's an interesting overlap of the hood and the fender. So instead of having panel gaps, it's an intentional gap. The clamshell hood kind of covers the fender and also gives you this cool little accent here, although it's fake. I mean, it looks like a vent. It's not really a vent. It's kind of a bummer. I also like these wheels. 20-inch wheels are also standard on all Infiniti QX55s. I think it's a good size. So let's swing around back. This is where it gets really impressive. The difference between the QX50 and the QX55 is this back section. The QX55 really leans into that kind of sportback style SUV, which you've seen in some Mercedes and BMW models, and even other car manufacturers are kind of leaning into that interesting sporty looking CUV market. It is all LEDs back here. You have these really cool, almost clouded LEDs that go the whole length right here. And then you have your reverse lights, brake lights, all the normal stuff. Nice Infiniti badge, QX55, all-wheel drive on opposite ends. You do have real exhaust tips. The exhaust pipe just kind of ends and then you have this built-in, it is metal, it's not plastic by the way. But yeah, it's a beautiful, sporty looking, aggressive rear end. You have this cool black rear spoiler that complements the black in the mirrors and some of the body cladding. It's just a fantastic looker. But exterior aside, what is something you will notice most if you buy one of these? Well, it is of course the interior. Let's take a look. So we are here in the interior of the Infiniti QX55. And again, Monaco red is quite the looker. I love how they use the red color, not overwhelmingly, but just in kind of an interesting way. They just put it on the seats, and really just the center of the seats. It still has the black kind of bolstering. And then in the center armrest that kind of swoops down to the right of the display, up and around it and over it. I love that. So very good use of colors, and materials are actually pretty good in here as well. Infiniti has always been, the premium brand of Nissan, and this finally feels properly premium. Of course it did, 2014, back in the day when they first really spearheaded this luxury, cool, sculpted car look, but it kind of fell by the wayside for a while. And in some ways it still does. I'm still not a fan of the infotainment, but I will say 2 screens is actually growing on me, which is not what I expected. It's an interesting dichotomy of how you operate them, and sometimes it's confusing. But once you start understanding how the 2 screens interoperate, it does help a bit, especially for people who use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. That is entirely the purpose of this top screen. And I actually have found myself enjoying the ability to manipulate menus without losing CarPlay, my directions, whatever's going on. And it's interesting because they've updated the exterior phenomenally, and some of the interior, there's a lot of updates Infiniti has made, finally. But they still leave us with this kind of mediocre looking infotainment system. The graphics are not great. It is fairly responsive, just a little bit laggy. And there's still just unnecessary buttons, unnecessary confusion with how some of the menu items work. Not my favorite. I do appreciate Infiniti finally giving cooled seats, and then wireless CarPlay is default. It's standard across all QX55s. They don't have a fully digital dash like some of the competition does, although that could be confusing having 3 large screens. They still have the screen in between the gauges. You do have a tachometer, even though it is a CVT. So I guess you can monitor your revs, even though it kind of picks what it needs at any given moment. But design-wise, I really like this. I even like kind of the chrome around the vents. There's really not that much piano black except for this lower screen here, but you don't have to touch much of it. I'm glad that touch points are not the glossy piano black. They have a real kind of dark maple wood here in some of the bits along the interior and the door and the dash. Nice leather all the way across. It's just a lot of nice touch points. This plastic is pretty, I don't know, at least it's matte finish, but I don't really like the plastic in the center console. Not a big fan. And another interesting thing missing is a wireless phone charger. Most cars that offer wireless CarPlay will give you a wireless Qi phone charger, and so that's an interesting thing missing. I like the dedicated camera button, but the cameras themselves kind of remind me of, I don't know, Nintendo GameCube graphics. Not the best, but I will take a 360 camera over no camera at all. The steering wheel's fine. Paddle shifters are a strange thing to have with a CVT, but I guess in some ways it does make sense. You do get to control kind of the rev range. There's again no gears, but you can actually specify you want higher revs. I love having auto sensing wipers, although it's interesting, some car manufacturers have the auto in the position to where it's equal to your turn signal indicator. In this case, Infiniti does not, so that's kind of annoying. I feel like most people would leave it on auto, which means the wiper stock and the turn signal stock will never be symmetrical. You also have a 16 speaker Bose Stereo, and it's fine. It's not really a phenomenal speaker system. You do have all the Bose features of like setting up the sound and different settings. There's 2 different sound settings. I hate that. They have Bose Centerpoint, driver's audio stage. I don't necessarily like any of it. I mean, Bose is okay. This is not necessarily fatiguing, but it's also not just like an audiophile system. Definitely not that. I will say I don't like the rearview mirror. They've been using that for like a decade or more. My Mazda Miata from 2012 has the exact same rearview mirror. It just looks out of place entirely. It's not even the same texture of matte plastic as they have down here. You have a small little moonroof up here. I say small because, yeah, a lot of other CUVs, even cheaper ones, have a full length like panoramic moonroof. So that's an interesting thing missing from this car as well. There's just a bunch of things they could have added in to make it feel even more premium, and I hope they do in the future. But this is a step in the right direction. Well, I guess that's it for the front. Let's take a look at the back really quick. All right, so there's really not a lot to talk about back here. You got some of the same accents in the seating, the same leather perforations, even though there is no rear heated seats or cooled seats. That's something I would have loved to see back here, and another thing that could have, put it more into that premium market they're approaching. You do have a third zone for the climate control though, but space-wise, it's very impressive, especially considering the slope-back nature of a sporty CUV. I am sitting not only behind myself, but this has the same kind of egress where the steering wheel, leaves and the seat pulls back to give you ample space to get in and out of the front seat. So the seat is in its further back position, and I still have a few inches in front of me, and I'm actually fairly comfortable back here. You have some of the same materials, and I do like that the wood has extended into the back. It's fine. I do wish there was the panoramic moonroof. That it makes it feel a bit more like cramped having this lower ceiling instead of a roof that you can see out of. There is only one USB charging port back here, although there's a third one in the center console for the front, so I guess kids back here can fight over who charges their devices. So yeah, it's totally fine. If I was a kid, I'd be fairly happy back here, although I'd be like, Mom, why didn't you buy a CUV with a better moonroof? Good question, little Johnny. So storage-wise, it's actually pretty good. To actually get into the back, it took me a second to figure it out, but this little nook right here where the A is, even though I guess it's not an A, I don't know. Never really figured out their logo, although I like their logo. This little button here is the little button to open the door. So it is a relatively narrow hatch, more or less, but it's fairly usable. 27 cubic feet of storage space, and then when you fold down the rear seats, you double that, giving you 54 cubic feet. And that's actually quite impressive. You even have this little storage bin down here, which has, fix the flat stuff right now. And you have these nice big handles here to actually fold down the rear seat. But it doesn't fold down that well, and I feel like these are gonna break. I mean, that's not a good feeling. So I don't know, maybe fold them down from the front. Back here, I have a feeling it'll work for a while and then eventually break off. So yeah, totally decent, totally usable storage space. It's a CUV, but pretty impressive given the really sloped back aggressive look of the rear. So let's swing around front, look at the engine bay, then we'll take it out on the road. Here we go. So VC turbo, it's the first thing you see. That means variable compression. So this engine will actually alter the compression ratio to give you theoretically better fuel economy. This is just a 2-liter engine, but it also gives you a turbo. So that's cool. Who doesn't love turbos? But mated with the CVT, it's just kind of an interesting combination and something I'm not a fan of. I think Infiniti could have done really well if they had given this a proper like 8 or 9 speed, I don't know, something automatic, and they could have made it a lot more exhilarating and fun to drive. You have 268 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque, which are decent numbers, but this does weigh around 4,000 pounds, so it's a lot of weight to carry around. Let's go see how it does on the open road, and yeah, not getting my hopes up. I am just, CVTs, am I right? But I do like the hydraulic hood. That is a nice little feature there. All right, driving the Infiniti QX50. I am down a GoPro, so I'm going POV style for you guys. Let's first get started. As you can see, once you fire it up, the seat and steering wheel kind of move together to give you your driving position. Got CarPlay pulled up there, and yeah, again, this is kind of an interesting menu design. I mean, there's 2 separate screens, and figuring out how they interoperate is an interesting experience, but once you get used to it, you actually almost find yourself enjoying it. which is not something I expected. You have all your heated seat, cooled seat materials here. I do have cooling on just a little bit. It's starting to get warm. This lower screen is really, as long as you have CarPlay open, it's almost pointless unless you're changing some settings or doing more in-depth things with the climate control. You have a nice steering wheel heater, that's good, but not something I'll be using today. And there's audio. So you could have, Taylor Swift down here and then the map taking up the whole screen. So that's kind of nice. Shifting it into drive, this lovely CVT here. Honestly, it's really quite comfortable. I've been impressed. You do have full adjustability in both seats, including lumbar support, so that's nice. And it's, it's fine. I've never thought I'd say this in the modern day, but I like Infiniti right now. Of course, that's from a comfort perspective. It's still not my favorite UI. This looks like still 2014 to me, as far as graphics, user interface, stuff like that. But it is nice to have CarPlay, and that of course will update to keep up with the times as far as how it's keeping up with like modern graphics and stuff like that. So can't complain too much there. So I wanted to start right off with how this car does in kind of a performance segment. We're gonna go drive a Canyon. And on paper, it's really not performance oriented. The turbo, that word turbo is probably its only saving grace. But the CVT, the variable compression engine, I'm just not sure how that's gonna do. I'll let this guy get a bit of a head start on this. And I will put it here into sport mode with the drive button. So that will put, you can see the modes here, your personal, sport, standard, and eco. Sport is what we'll start off with. Personal, you can actually set it to be almost, oh, here we go. Yeah. So it's a CVT, and some CVTs, they'll rev up as fast as they can and then hold that rev because it's the most optimal to get it up to speed, which doesn't sound sporty at all. It sounds horrible. What Infiniti is doing is actually almost simulating gear shifts to kind of give you kind of a, I don't know, like more performance audible feedback. But it's just not a great sounding engine. Granted, the engine maybe sounds fine. It's what they're pumping into the cabin that sounds kind of growly and throaty. I am just not a fan at all. Downshifting basically with the paddles gives you the higher rev band, which will keep you into boost for the turbo. So that's kind of nice. There goes my camera back there. So we got 4,000 RPM. Oh, so it jumps almost 1,000 there. It's relatively engaging. So something else sport mode does is changes the steering. It is a fully adaptive steering, so you can kind of change it to be more, I don't know, direct. So like every input I'm giving is actually much more direct to where I'll be going, versus standard or even eco mode will kind of loosen up the steering and make it so you can turn it a bit more without turning that directly. It's not the most powerful, less than 300 horsepower and torque for a car that weighs, over 4,000 pounds, but I don't feel like it's slow. And I think most people would actually be pretty happy with this. Do a quick U-turn here. It's a nice blinker sound, one of my favorite turn signal noises I've ever heard. All right, let these cars go. And let's see how the turning radius is. It's a fairly long car. This is about the length of a Subaru Outback. And oh, that is really tight. Wow, I didn't even need all of that. So, great turning radius. That's impressive. You still got that same growl in standard mode too. Yeah, that's just, I mean, I guess it can sound engaging. It depends who you are. I mean, some people know how a good performance-oriented car should sound, and then others just hear noise and that triggers feedback in the brain of like, oh, I'm doing something sporty and fun. So take it as you will. Some people may love it. I'm not a fan. Let's actually jump it down into eco mode here. So eco mode has a very interesting approach to driving. What it's actually doing is putting a false floor on the accelerator. So right now, I'm flooring it, and there is no growl whatsoever. It's like, how slow can it possibly help you drive? So it's still there in eco mode. That false floor is, I mean, it's I don't know how to describe it. It's like there, but you can really push past it if you need to, and then it'll growl again. So you always have the option to kind of override what the car thinks you should be doing. But it will help you drive more eco-friendly. I mean, it'll almost never really push you into the turbo band. So we'll see how the eco mode does with acceleration from 0 here in a bit. But in the settings, you can actually adjust that eco mode floor. You can kind of make it like soft, medium, or hard. I'm not sure which setting it is right now, but it's like barely there. All right, so I'm gonna pull to a stop here. There's no one around me. Okay, we have full stop, and this is flooring it in eco mode. 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. It's like 0 to 60 in eventually. Probably 20 seconds 0 to 60. But I saved some trees while doing it. Oh, that's funny. So there's two eco like icons on the dash. The one in the center is your true driving mode, and then the one to the left is just how eco-friendly you are at the moment. So I'm pushing it against that false floor, and the eco button on the left is flashing, like saying, hey, FYI, you're hitting that false floor. Do you want more power? If so, take it out of eco mode. So that's definitely interesting. But putting on ProPilot Assist, so that beep right there, absolutely hate it. It does see that I have lanes, and it sees the car in front of me. But let's see just what it'll do. And theoretically, it should be a full like stop and go system. So as long as you have someone in front of you that the car detects, it should be able to let you, progress through stop and go traffic just fine. We'll find out here in a second. Again, that is a lovely turn signal. All right, so you do have to hit the resume button to continue. So it's not like full stop and go, or at least we didn't hit the, oh, it just turned off. All right, well, it was like, yeah, I have no idea what to do. Okay, gonna take it out of eco mode, get back into standard mode. There we go. Back up to speed. And then we'll activate the cruise control again here. And I will say, I do like the heads-up display. I love seeing cars with that. There's the warning to jiggle the steering wheel. And it shows me the speed limit, your current speed, and what the cruise control speed is set at, as well as all the cruise control icons. So just what options you have turned on. So it sees a little steering wheel icon. That means I'm using the lane keep assist. It also has the car follow symbol, so it knows I'm following the car in front of it, and it sees it on the screen. It's doing a pretty good job at keeping the lanes, keeping sight of the lanes, but it is really jostling me between them, almost unnecessarily so. And yeah, I'm having to like correct it a lot to not approach the center line too much. It's just kind of like a, ProPilot assist, which assist is an important word. It's assisting you, but honestly, it feels a bit more like I am assisting it. Yeah, it just keeps like veering to the left. I don't like that. All right, the cars in front of me have slowed down. Jeez, that is aggressive. So yeah, I don't know. It's not my favorite cruise control system. I'll say that much. That beep. So it lost the lanes there. And I can't find anywhere to turn off these really annoying chimes. They remind me of the fasten seatbelt chimes on airplanes, and it's really pretty obnoxious. So you see the blind spot monitor lights are right here, which is fine. It lets you see it pretty easily as a driver. But I will say I prefer the blind spot monitors on the mirrors because, there's that beep again, as a motorcyclist and a Miata enthusiast, I like to see that other cars are seeing me in their blind spot. Maybe it's a trust issue, I don't know. There's pros and cons to having it in here, but I do prefer on the mirror. But you can control the brightness right there, so that's an interesting feature they threw in there. But yeah, it's ProPilot Assist is fine. It does relatively the trick, but it's just, oh yeah, it's not very trustworthy. It's more of you assisting the car versus the car assisting you. I almost feel like I have to pay more attention when I'm using it just to make sure the car doesn't do something unexpected. So it has improved over the years, but there's a lot of maybe better cruise control systems out there. But as far as UVs go, I mean, it's a very nice riding experience. The suspension seems to be tuned pretty well for comfort, but it also does well in the corners. I mean, there's not a whole lot of body roll back when I was cruising in the canyons. It's a quiet interior. It is acoustically improved glass, however they do that. And there's even active noise canceling, although I don't really notice that very much. Oh, I hate that so much. But in the city with like stop and go traffic, this seems to be doing a bit better, and it's a bit, I don't know, it just feels a bit safer, not being kind of out, on a fast-paced highway where any serious mistake could be much scarier. So just cruising around town, especially if you have your hands on the wheel, the radar sensor for the car in front of you is nice. I would almost say turning off lane keep assist is going to be the best bet for your ears, unless any of you know of a way to turn off that really annoying chime. But to turn off the lane keep assist, just go over here. There we go. Steering assist is off, and now I should not hear that anymore. So yeah, it's doing better now getting to a stop. So it's just like the faster highways, like 55 miles an hour. Once you get to a stoplight there, the car, it would probably stop you from a collision, but I just don't know if I trust it. But yeah, let's get this driving wrapped up and go back for some final thoughts. So that is the Infiniti QX55. If you had asked me a few years ago how I felt about Infiniti, I'd be kind of mixed feelings. I mean, they are, yes, technically a premium car, but they had been lacking behind the competition for a while now. They just didn't really update to keep up with the rest of the field. But they are kind of breaking the habit. The styling is phenomenal. This is a beautiful car, and it makes me very excited to see where the rest of the lineup is going. Now, there are some nitpicks I have with the interior, and it's not exactly a performance-oriented powertrain, but it is still a good car. As far as like the value, I mean, $60,000 is a lot of money, and there are other cars you could get that you might like more for less than this, But the flip side is also true. There's much more expensive cars that don't really get you much more than this one can offer. And everyone has their own opinions, including myself. As far as my editor's note, I'd say this is one of the first times in a while where Infiniti will get a net positive review from me across the board. It's all been improved. I'd like to see it improved a bit more. And it's not quite the perfect car for me, but it is the perfect car for someone, which I don't think I've said about Infiniti in a while now. CUVs, you know, it's extremely popular right now, one of the most popular market segments. And I'd say some of the people in the market for a CUV are not actually looking for true performance, but they do like styling. And that's where this excels. It's not exactly the most performance-oriented CUV, nor is it the most fuel efficient or practical, but it is beautiful, and for some people, this is exactly what you're looking for. But what do you think? Is Infiniti taking steps in the right direction? I definitely think they are. I'm excited to see how the rest of the lineup changes based on the appearance of this one. We'll see you very soon.